Hey guys, tonight we slip quietly into a grand Victorian home. Lace-curtained windows, polished brass knockers, and staircases that groan softly under decades of footsteps. You're not a guest. Not tonight. You're the newest addition to the staff, still adjusting your cap and flattening your apron, stomach knotted, palms damp. The footman gave you a crooked smile and muttered something about, "Just wait till you meet her." Her. You haven't even seen the mistress of the house yet, or the master. But you've already heard the heavy click of a keyring echoing down the back corridor. You don't even know her name yet, but you know she's awake, and if you're smart, you're already making your bed tighter than a soldier's bunk. You step inside the servants' entrance as the bell tolls 6. It's not a friendly welcome. The hall is still dark, faintly smelling of ash and boot polish. The silence here isn't empty. It's organised. You can almost feel someone watching from behind one of those tightly drawn doors. A pair of black leather boots appears at the end of the corridor. They don't stomp. They don't shuffle. They glide. The housekeeper, in full black bombazine, emerges like a force of nature. Her hair is pulled so tight it could slice cheese. Her eyes flick over your shoes, your collar, the way you're holding your hands. She doesn't nod, doesn't frown, just observes. You won't know if she likes you until 3 Thursdays from now, and even then she might just assign you extra silver to polish as a reward. You try to smile, she doesn't return it. She gestures wordlessly toward the staircase leading down. "Your kitchen staff," the butler mumbles behind you. But she's already disappeared around the corner. You realise he waited to speak until she was gone. You descend the steps, passing rooms with names you don't understand yet. Scullery, still room, boot room. You spot another girl, maybe 16, with red raw knuckles scrubbing a pan like it wronged her. She doesn't look up. You're invisible here, unless the housekeeper says otherwise. Because that's the rule you're about to learn. Nothing moves in this house without her say-so. Breakfast isn't served, coal isn't lit, and laundry doesn't dry unless she has it in her daily ledger. You could knock over a vase and the mistress upstairs might not even notice. But if you leave a smudge on the doorknob to the morning room, she will. You'll hear murmurs later, that she once ran 5 households, that she knows how many buttons are missing from every uniform, that she keeps a list of which maids blush too much when the gardener comes round, that she caught a footman sneaking leftover lamb in 1872 and he never worked again. Oh, and that she never forgets. She inspects the cleaning rags like they're surgical instruments. She tracks the use of soap down to the half-ounce. And her black notebook, always with her. Some say it holds the secrets of the house. Others say it's just a way to write your name in when you've disappointed her, for the 4th time. No one's ever seen her flip past page 32. All right, before you get too cozy, go ahead and smash that like button and subscribe, but only if your heart says yes. Let me know where you're listening from, and what time it is for you right now. Dim the lights, get that fan going for some background vibes, and let's chill into tonight's little adventure. She taps the clock on the kitchen wall. 7 sharp. She looks at you. That's the only signal you get before she disappears into the larder. Welcome to the first morning of the rest of your life. And tomorrow, you better be 5 minutes early. By your 2nd hour in the house, you've already learned what not to do. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't track ash across the floorboards. And above all, don't try to help unless the housekeeper herself tells you to. She doesn't shout. She doesn't need to. When she moves, everyone else seems to hold their breath, like the air itself shifts to accommodate her passage. You see the kitchen maid stiffen when she hears that particular heel click on the stone. You notice the under-butler fixing his cravat again, even though no one important is expected that morning. It's as though the Queen herself could walk through, but it's her presence that straightens backs and silences coughs. In theory, the lady of the house is the one in charge, but she spends most of her time arranging flowers and replying to letters. The master, rarely seen, business in the city, hunting weekends, social clubs. They're the ornamental face of the household. The housekeeper, she's the spine. When something breaks, it's her who arranges the repair. When someone's late, it's her knock at the door that follows. She's both judge and jury in the world below stairs, and not even the butler dares to play defence counsel, unless it's worth risking a month's worth of cold glances. She has her own staircase, separate from yours, her own room, with a small fireplace and thick curtains. Rumour has it she keeps a tin of biscuits locked in her drawer, but no one's ever seen her eat. She drinks her tea strong and black, never with milk. The strangest thing? There's no rage in her, no theatrical cruelty, just structure. If you drop a plate, she doesn't scold, she simply records it. Then, somehow, you find yourself scrubbing chamber pots the next 3 nights instead of doing afternoon teacups. You'll never be told it was punishment. It just happens, like weather. You're sent to collect linens from the airing cupboard. On your way, you pass the butler, who nods politely, then glances down the hallway. You follow his gaze. She's standing there, not moving, just watching. You realise something. He waited until she wasn't looking to smile at you. That evening, as the staff eats their stew in the servants' hall, someone mentions the new parlour-maid, already gone. Too slow with a coal scuttle, didn't fold napkins properly, or maybe she whispered too loudly about the younger son's boots. No one knows for sure. But they all agree on one thing. It was her decision. Later, you pass by her room again. The door is ajar. Inside, you catch a glimpse of something strange. A sewing kit, perfectly arranged. A portrait on the wall. Not of family, but of the first house she ever ran. The frame is dusty, but the glass gleams. And next to it, a list. Names, dates, houses. Maybe old staff. Maybe not. You'll sleep in the attic tonight. Your mattress is thin. Your pillow smells of starch. But more than anything, what keeps you awake is the knowledge that tomorrow the same clock will chime. She'll appear again at the end of the hall, and once again, without a word, the whole house will pivot to face her gravity. You wonder if she ever sleeps. The second day, it's the keys that catch your eye. Not her face, not the stiff black bombazine or the faint scent of lavender water and coal dust, but the enormous gleaming ring of keys that swings from her belt with every step. Not all the staff have noticed it yet. They're too busy with their own scrubbing, polishing, folding and sighing. But you watch, and you realise those keys aren't just tools, they're symbols. Each one opens a door, but together they form a map of control. There's the long bronze one, curved teeth, slightly dulled. That's for the linen closet. You see her use it twice today. Once to inspect a folded sheet, once to relock the door. The housekeeper doesn't just hand out fresh linens. She inspects the corner stitching. If it's worn, she marks it in a notebook with a neat code. C3F4. What it means, you have no idea. But by the next day, the sheet is gone. The big iron one with the ornate bow, that's the silver cupboard. She opens it in the presence of the butler, and only then. He counts. She double counts. It's not mistrust. It's policy. 2 minds, 1 count. But her hand is the one that locks it again, and the ring goes back on her belt. Even the cook doesn't get access to the preserves without her. There's a tiny brass key, delicate as a child's spoon, that she uses to open the spice drawer. You watch as she measures out 2 ounces of mace and a pinch of cinnamon. Then she relocks it. The cook doesn't argue. She knows better. Nutmeg's expensive. Nutmeg disappears when left unlocked. Later, you ask the tweenie, a younger maid whose only job seems to be running up and down stairs until she faints, why the housekeeper guards the keys herself. 'Cause she doesn't just run the house, the tweenie whispers. She is the house. You think it's dramatic, until you see her open the wine cellar. there's a small dusty stair hidden behind a cabinet in the dining room hallway. She opens it with a key so old it looks medieval. She disappears down into the gloom, and the butler follows with a candle. No one else goes. That bottle of claret served at dinner tonight. It made its way through her fingers, but even more curious, there are keys she never uses. One has no matching lock in sight. It's twisted, old, and looks scorched. The tweenie says it used to open the old schoolroom before the young master was sent away and the governess ran off to Brighton. Another one is rumoured to fit a chest under the mistress's bed, but no one knows what's inside. When she walks, the keys rattle softly. It's a sound that begins to haunt you, like the slow ticking of the grandfather clock in the entryway, because every door that opens is a privilege, and every one she leaves locked is a message. That night, you dream of keys. They dangle over your head like stars, turning slowly, their teeth clicking against one another like whispers. You wake up before dawn, heart racing, unsure if it was the chime of the downstairs clock or just the sound of her passing below your floorboards. You see, the housekeeper doesn't just own the keys, she orchestrates the rhythm of the entire house with them. When she unlocks the servants' pantry in the morning, it's a signal the day has begun. When she locks it again at 9 p.m, no one dares sneak a biscuit afterward. The same applies to the laundry cupboard, the coal scuttles, even the drawer where the good napkins are kept for Sunday tea. The keys aren't just about objects, they're about time, hierarchy, control. You've noticed that she'll sometimes unlock a door and then, without explanation, lock it again moments later. You ask no questions. That's the first thing everyone learns. She doesn't need to say a word. She'll just jingle the keys slightly and suddenly the tweenie stops humming, the footman sets down his newspaper, and the kitchen maid drops her voice mid-gossip. It's not fear exactly. It's reverence, or perhaps a kind of quiet survival instinct. One afternoon, you're assigned to help carry clean towels up to the guest corridor. That's when you notice a door you've never seen opened. Dark green, with a brass handle right near the master's study. No one speaks of it. You ask the under-housemaid what's inside, and she just says, she's the only one who ever goes in. Of course she appears as you ask, and for the first time her gaze lands on you before you notice her approach. She steps between you and the green door. "No one but me," she says simply. Not cruel, not menacing, just final. You nod. She turns, and her keys swing once more, that same haunting clink. A sound like rules wrapped in metal. It's around then you realise something else. Even the butler doesn't have keys. Oh, he carries a little ring, 3 or 4 simple brass ones. He can access the wine glasses, the decanters, and the door to the smoking room, but he must ask her if he wants the cellar unlocked. And the butler asking anyone for anything. That's a rare sight. Later that week, the mistress of the house comes downstairs unexpectedly. She wants a certain tablecloth, Irish linen, hand-stitched, kept in the blue box. And it's the housekeeper who opens the cabinet, not the lady herself. That's when it finally dawns on you. The lady of the house owns the silver, the china, the linens, but she doesn't know where they are, or how many, or when they were last used. The housekeeper does. That key ring is her sceptre. Every click is a decree. And when you overhear the lady whisper to a guest that the staff have been so reliable this year, you watch the housekeeper in the corner, sipping her tea, expression unreadable. She knows. She knows who really keeps the house running. She knows exactly how many sugar cubes were used this week, and if someone ever did try to steal a spoon, she'd know before they did it, and maybe, just maybe, that's why no one ever dares. You don't see her room until your 3rd week in the house. Not because it's hidden, no, it's just there, tucked behind the main service hallway, the one with the tiled floor and the faint scent of boiled starch. But no one ever dares walk too close. You've passed it every day. A dark walnut door with a polished brass handle, and a nameplate so immaculate you're sure she polishes it herself. Housekeeper is all it says. No name. As if she is the role, and the role is her. This morning, though, she calls for you. You freeze. Every other maid in the scullery looks up, eyes wide. The tweenie clutches her bucket. The kitchen maid mouths, "Good luck." You knock. Her voice is calm. "Enter." Inside, it's nothing like you expected. No gloom, no harshness. The room is small but warm. There's a fire quietly burning in a cast-iron grate. A round table holds her accounts, ink pots, and 2 clocks, one set precisely 2 minutes ahead. Beside the fireplace, a bookshelf, neat rows of manuals, ledgers, and one worn volume of Tennyson. But what arrests you most is the sense of quiet authority. Everything has its place. Nothing is wasted. Even her slippers are set at the exact same angle beneath the chair. The air smells faintly of lavender and something sharper. Carbolic soap, perhaps. She doesn't offer you a seat. Of course not. But she gestures toward the linen logbook. Have a look. I want you to understand how the inventory runs. You step forward, heart hammering. And there it is, line after line of entries, in her unmistakable slanted hand. Tablecloths, pillowcases, antimacassars, each item numbered, initialed, and marked with a date last used. Next to some are quiet little notations, frayed, rehemmed, transferred to attic linen. She watches you absorb the information, saying nothing. You realise this is the closest thing to praise you're going to get. She's testing you, inviting you in. Just a sliver. Above the desk hangs a framed sampler, the kind little girls once embroidered in finishing school. Only this one reads, "Order is peace." It's stitched in navy thread. The frame is plain oak. Somehow, that suits her better than any portrait ever could. A knock interrupts. It's the butler. He stands in the doorway, stiff-backed but deferential. The mistress requests the green brocade runner. Without a word, she unlocks the drawer behind her, retrieves it folded perfectly and hands it over. The butler nods once, no pleasantries, just function, and vanishes again. She doesn't look at you as she closes the drawer, relocks it, and returns to her seat. The upstairs may run on opinion, she says, but we run on fact. You glance at the bookshelves again. Some of the spines are cracked, as though read and reread over decades. There's a ledger marked 1847, another labelled staff rotations, a third with no label at all. She notices your eyes. That one stays shut. You nod. No explanation needed. Later that evening, as the house winds down and the lamps are lit one by one, you find yourself retracing your steps through the hallway, where her room quietly resides. This time, you pause. You hadn't noticed it before, but the positioning of her room is deliberate. From that single doorway, she commands a perfect view of both staircases, the service hallway, and the kitchen entrance. No staff member can sneak past without her knowing. It's not surveillance, it's design. She doesn't need to chase. She just knows. You peek again at the door, closed now, silent. But you know she's in there, likely reviewing the household ledger by candlelight or preparing the order sheet for Friday's market delivery. She never seems to rest, only resets. The next morning she's the first one up again. You know because the fireplace is already lit when you come down, and the tea kettle is warm. She must have been awake at least an hour before you. You've yet to catch her in any state of disorder. Not a hair out of place, not a button unfastened. And then there's the bellboard. It's mounted just outside her room, covered with tiny brass indicators labelled with each room in the house. When a member of the family rings from upstairs, say for hot water or a writing tray, a bell sounds and the label swings. She hears the bell before it finishes its first chime. Once you saw the tweeny race to respond to a ring from the morning room, only to find the housekeeper already halfway there, towel in hand, calm as anything. "One must always be listening," she murmured. But it's not just her listening. The entire household listens to her, even when she isn't speaking. At dinner she barely eats, yet nothing escapes her notice. She sits at the head of the long narrow table in the servants' hall, not the butler. He sits opposite, yes, and carves the meat. But the true energy of the room flows from her presence. When she folds her napkin, conversation dips. When she lifts her teacup, forks pause mid-air. A joke is told, something about the footman and the upstairs maid. Not inappropriate, just careless. You see her eyes flick up. The air chills slightly. The laughter dies. She doesn't reprimand. She doesn't raise her voice. But the message is unmistakable. This is not the place for that. You're starting to realise something else. Something more unsettling. The staff have dreams. They talk late at night about saving wages, about marrying, about perhaps opening a shop or writing letters to cousins in Canada. But the housekeeper? No one speaks of her past. No one mentions a Mr. Anything. No children. No village she returns to. She arrived here before most of them, and she will likely remain long after they're gone. And when you look into her room, just a small bed, a single rug, a cabinet of starched aprons, you realise she has sacrificed everything unnecessary. Because a house with a mistress and a master is just a residence, but a house with a housekeeper like her, that's a kingdom, and hers is flawless. It's the fourth week when you finally witness something rare. The housekeeper dealing with both the master and the mistress within the same hour. You've just finished dusting the banisters for the second time, because the first time didn't show intention, whatever that means, and you're heading past the drawing room when you hear it. The gentle rustle of silk skirts, followed by the sharper tread of polished leather shoes. The master and mistress are both home, and they're disagreeing. "I told you the curtains were to be drawn in the morning room," the mistress snaps. Her voice is delicate, like porcelain with a hairline crack. "And I told you," the master growls, "that the fire should not be lit until after luncheon. We're not heating the entire house just to impress the vicar's wife." There's a pause, then a soft knock on the door frame. The housekeeper doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't rush. She simply appears, black bombazine dress pressed to perfection, notebook in hand, and says, "Shall I proceed with the afternoon schedule, or would you prefer to review the week's expenditures first?" And just like that, the tension dissolves. The mistress sighs, gathers her shawl. The master mutters something under his breath and disappears toward the study. The housekeeper offers neither sympathy nor scolding. She doesn't take sides. But in that small moment, you saw what no guest ever does. She didn't just serve them, she handled them. Later, in the still room, the kitchen maid confirms it. She keeps the mistress calm and the master civilised. Without her, they'd be hosting dinner parties in the coal cellar. It's not far from the truth, because while the lady of the house gives the orders and the gentleman signs the cheques, it's the housekeeper who manages the 1,000 invisible threads between them. The mistress may choose the fabric for the guest room curtains, but it's the housekeeper who oversees their hanging, who ensures the drapery cords match the tassels, who reminds the upholsterer not to arrive during afternoon tea. She keeps track of the mistress's temper. Subtle things like how many drops of lavender water go into her bath, or how many times she changes her gloves before settling on a pair. She also monitors the master's habits. When he wants his brandy, which cigars he prefers, whether the footman should speak or simply wait. She memorizes every rhythm because knowing is controlling, and control is the cornerstone of her world. It's a kind of dance, and she leads with invisible steps. And while the lady of the house may flutter and the gentleman may thunder, she is the one who ensures no door slams, no vase falls, no servant gets caught in the crossfire. The staff call it steering the storm, and she does it without a ripple. But what's most fascinating is how she adjusts herself like clockwork between them, not just in behaviour, but in tone, in language, in posture. With the mistress, she speaks in soft, measured phrases, always with a faint touch of warmth, as if every sentence were polished like the family silver. "Yes, madam, I believe the lace collar complements the gown beautifully." "The lilies arrived early this morning, madam. Shall I have them arranged with the white roses?" But with the master the rhythm changes. Fewer pleasantries, more precision. The wine merchant confirmed delivery at 2. The new boots have been aired, and the soles waxed. There's a briskness to her voice, but never disrespect. She's a mirror, reflecting exactly what's needed back at them. You see it again when the mistress grows weepy over a letter from her sister. The entire house seems to hold its breath. The parlour maids whisper. The cook pretends to need herbs she doesn't. The butler disappears conveniently into the cellar, but the housekeeper... She glides in with a small tray. Tea, not too strong, 2 shortbread biscuits, and a folded linen handkerchief, embroidered with a delicate M. Nothing is said. She doesn't ask. She doesn't prod. She simply knows. And somehow, 20 minutes later, the mistress is writing thank you cards with a more determined hand. You begin to wonder if there's something almost unfair in it. How a woman who technically holds no title can influence the household with such quiet force. But then again, what title would you give her? Head of Operations, Minister of Domestic Stability, Shadow Queen? Because it's not just emotional labour she manages. There's a subtle intelligence in how she paces the day, like a conductor managing a symphony. If the master is in a foul mood, the staff is redirected to duties away from the main corridor. The squeaky hinge on the library door is fixed before he notices it. The dogs are walked precisely during his writing hour, never barking, never muddy. If the mistress is due for guests, the scent of fresh lilacs is placed subtly in the hallway. The newest maid, who tends to mumble, is assigned to polish doorknobs instead of serving tea. And if the mistress misplaces her brooch again, it will have already been laid out in a velvet tray by the time she asks for it. None of it is ordered. None of it is questioned. It just happens. And here's the strangest part. Neither master nor mistress ever thank her. Not because they're unkind, but because in their world the house simply runs, as if by magic, as if the hearth stokes itself, the tea steeps on cue, and the larder is always full. But you know the truth now. You've seen the lists, the ledgers, the keys. You've seen her lift the mistress's mood with the placement of a cushion and keep the master from exploding over a missing hat stand by producing it, already brushed and waiting, before he even thinks to call for it. She is the nerve centre of this house, not flashy, not loud, but constant, capable, indispensable. And if either of them were to try to replace her, well, that's a story no one wants to tell twice. You don't realise you're at the bottom of the chain until you try to do something helpful. It starts innocently enough. The kitchen maid asks you to fetch a clean apron from the laundry room. You nod, eager to please. Your hands are still sore from yesterday's scouring, but your pride is intact. You rush down the hallway, find the door, and it's unlocked for once. You step inside. That was your first mistake. The housekeeper appears before you've even touched the linen shelf. You didn't hear her approach. You never do. One moment you're standing in the quiet scent of starch and steam, and the next She's there, shadow falling across the tiles. Her expression doesn't change. She doesn't yell. But you feel it. The shift in air pressure, like a storm gathering without thunder. Who gave you permission to enter? Your tongue trips. You manage a whisper about the kitchen maid. She says nothing. Her eyes drop to the apron in your hand, and then, with the gentlest motion, she closes the cupboard. You were not told by me, and that's it. No raised voice, no slap on the wrist, just a recalibration of your place. Later, the kitchen maid pulls you aside. You have to ask her first, always her, even if it's just a rag for the floor. You nod, pretending you understand, but truthfully you're still reeling, because it isn't that you were wrong to help, it's that you broke the order, and in this house, order is everything. The structure is like a skeleton, hard, precise, unbending. At the top of the service world is the housekeeper, beneath her, the butler, then the cook, then senior maids, junior maids, tweenies, and finally, you. You're the marrow of the bones, necessary but invisible. You see it during meal times. The housekeeper gets first pick of the staff dinner, not the butler, not the cook. Her chair sits slightly raised, her plate placed with care. The scullery maid once tried to serve herself before the housekeeper arrived. She was reassigned to ashbin duty for a week. Then there's the chalkboard outside the scullery. Every morning, names are listed with duties in perfect copperplate. You learn to scan for your own name, never daring to hope for anything other than floors or stove black. But the housekeeper's handwriting tells you more than just tasks. If your name is underlined, she's watching you. If it's smudged, someone else wrote it. And that's a mystery in itself. No one questions it, not even the butler. He manages the wine, the guests, the cigars, but she manages you. One day he passes you in the hallway and says softly, "Best keep in her good books. She forgets nothing." Then he straightens his gloves and vanishes up the stairs. You wonder if she has an actual book, a real one, hidden somewhere, with your name in it, with notes beside it. You try not to think about it when you're sweeping the back steps, but every time she looks at you for a moment too long, you wonder what's being written in her mind and how long it will stay there. You begin to understand how the chain works, how every word, every task, every flicker of expression travels through a web of glances and silences. But there's no map on the wall, no diagram of who reports to whom. It's all felt, and the housekeeper is the pulse at the centre of it. She doesn't shout instructions down corridors, she barely speaks. But when she places her pen beside the task list in the morning, everyone reads it like scripture. No one questions why the chimney brushes have been moved. No one asks why the parlour maid's duties suddenly include polishing all brass fixtures twice. They just do. And when someone doesn't, you learn about that on your 5th Thursday. The new scullery lad, fresh from another house full of grins and stories, decides he's too good to carry coal buckets. Says it's girls' work. He says it once, loudly. By noon, he's been reassigned to lavatory duty, not just any lavatories, the ones outside used by the gardeners, and the housekeeper, she doesn't say a word to him. She just watches as the butler delivers the message. Her hands stay clean. Her authority doesn't. By supper, he's quiet. By Sunday, he's gone. No explanation. Just silence, and an empty plate at the far end of the table. Spoke out of turn, the tweenie whispers. Didn't respect the chain. That's when you finally grasp the invisible truth. This isn't just a house. It's a living system. One in which every gesture from her trickles downward. And when she adjusts her spectacles or taps a fingernail against the banister, the entire staff shifts. Meals change. Uniforms tighten. Conversations stall. But there's more to it than fear. You begin to see that her control is laced with responsibility. She doesn't just discipline, she protects. You're behind her one morning when the footman stumbles while carrying a tray of porcelain teacups. He pales. The crash never comes, but the clatter is loud enough to rattle every rib in his chest. The butler opens his mouth, about to chastise, but the housekeeper steps in first. "Too much wax on that tile," she says simply. "See that it's repolished with care." No blame, just correction. The footman nods gratefully. The butler closes his mouth. You realise in that moment that her authority isn't about dominance, it's about stability. Every decision she makes, from where the shoe polish is kept to how the staff passes one another on the stairs, is calculated to keep the machine running without friction. And when it does run smoothly, when the toast is warm, the silver shines, and no one slams a door, it's her success, even if no one says it aloud, especially then. You ask the tweenie how long the housekeeper's been here. "No one knows," she whispers. "She was already here when the old master lived. Some say she came with the house." You laugh, then you stop. Because maybe she did. By the time your 6th week rolls around, you've noticed something curious. Meals don't just appear. They're orchestrated. Not by the cook, though she barks orders and flings ladles like a general with a gravy-stained apron. And not by the footman, who ferry dishes to and fro with the solemnity of undertakers. No, the true conductor of this culinary symphony is the housekeeper, and it starts with the menu. Every Sunday evening, just as the last lamp is snuffed and the house exhales into quiet, she retreats to her little writing table with a stub of pencil and a sheaf of crinkled receipts. The menu book appears, brown leather, soft at the edges from years of turning. Inside a neat grid of days, meals, courses. You've seen her study it like a chessboard. Monday, mutton of course, always mutton. It's tradition, something about economy and digestion. Tuesday brings haddock or salt pork, depending on what the fishmonger delivers. Thursday is roast pigeon or goose if the season allows. And Sunday, well, that's roast beef, puddings, and the kind of stewed apples that make even the cook stand a little taller when they're served. But none of it is decided by whim. The housekeeper cross-references what's in the larder, what the mistress prefers, what the master will tolerate, and, crucially, what's about to go off. Because waste is a sin in this house. If 3 eggs are on the edge of spoiling, they appear miraculously in Monday's custard. If a heel of bread is growing stale, it becomes a baked pudding dusted with nutmeg. She knows not only what's been eaten, but what wasn't. That untouched pork chop on Thursday. It's noted. The 2nd helping of stewed tomatoes? Also noted. One day you're in the still room when she walks in holding a jug of milk. She sniffs it once, frowns, and pours it into a side pan. Curdled. Use it for scones, she says, before moving on without waiting for acknowledgement. And when the butcher sends the wrong cut of beef, you hear her correct him through the back window, voice even and unbothered, as though she's commenting on the weather. This is sweet, not flank. You'll take it back. You'll deliver proper flank by noon, and if it's late again, we'll speak to Mr. Hartwell instead. He apologises 3 times before leaving. She doesn't raise an eyebrow. You realise this isn't just about food, it's about balance. She's feeding the family, yes, but she's also feeding the staff, managing budget, avoiding spoilage, calculating morale. When the mistress has a luncheon, the menu must be dainty. Watercress sandwiches, jellied tongue, gooseberry tarts that won't stain gloves. But the very same day, the scullery staff is fed leftover stew, bulked with barley and onion ends. The guests never know, the staff never complain, because no one goes hungry under her watch, and on the rare occasion when there's a treat, like a honey cake from the village fair, it's she who cuts, she who chooses who gets a sliver, and she who tucks the last wedge into a linen cloth and stores it in her own drawer. Probably for the gardener's boy who lost his mother last winter. probably for someone who never even asks. That's the kind of power she has, the power to nourish, quietly. The deeper you sink into the rhythm of the household, the more you understand that food here is more than sustenance. It's currency, discipline, reward, and diplomacy all at once. And the housekeeper? She's the banker, the judge, and the secret dispenser of mercy. You notice it first with the jam. There are 3 kinds: gooseberry, raspberry, and black currant. The mistress favours raspberry, of course. The master likes none. He thinks preserves are for children and invalids. But among the staff, the gooseberry is the rarest. Tart, golden, and made in only 1 batch a year. You've never seen it on the servants' table. Until one morning, after a particularly rough week, the tweenie, exhausted, pale, and clearly fighting a cold, finds a piece of toast already laid out for her, gooseberry jam glistening on top. No one says a word, but everyone notices. Later, when the housekeeper walks by, she doesn't even look in the tweenie's direction. She simply taps the bell pull and moves on, as if nothing had happened. Then there's the curious case of the apples. One Wednesday, a basket arrives from the orchard, more than usual, green and sour and not fit for eating raw. Cook mutters about poor quality. But the housekeeper doesn't complain. That evening 12 apple pies appear. 2 are sent upstairs. The rest are sliced carefully for the staff. The scullery maid whispers, "She's calming the house," and she is. Because the family is tense. The master is awaiting news on an investment. The mistress has been brooding over some slight at last week's luncheon. Voices have been sharper, doors closing louder. But with pie, there's quiet. Sugar settles what tempers can't. And when the undergardener complains that the kitchen won't give him tea biscuits anymore, you watch her fix it without a word. The next day, a tin is quietly placed in the greenhouse, marked "for tools only." He finds it. Everyone pretends not to know. But the most surprising moment comes on a bleak Friday, when the rain hasn't stopped for days and the washing won't dry and the entire house smells like damp wool and despair. You're dragging a bucket down the back stairs when she intercepts you. She says nothing, just hands you a steaming mug. Rich, sweet tea with a dash of nutmeg. No one else is around. You blink, stammer a thank you. She nods, turns, and walks away. It's only later, while mopping the parlour floor, that it hits you. She must have remembered how soaked you got fetching coal that morning. She must have noticed the slight tremble in your fingers. And in a house where everything has a schedule, where every ounce of butter is measured, where eggs are logged and tea leaves counted, she made an exception. For you. Not because she's soft, but because she sees everything. Because in her hands, a menu isn't just a list of meals. It's a ledger of emotions. It tells her who's tired, who's tense, who's worth encouraging. The cook may wield the spoon, but she decides who's fed, and when, and why. You thought cleaning had an end, a beginning, a middle, a shiny result, and then it's done. You were wrong. Here, under the watchful eye of the housekeeper, cleaning isn't an act. It's a state of being, a cycle with no end. There's a chart pinned on the inside of the stillroom door, inked by hand, updated weekly, not just a list of chores, but a calendar of cleanliness. Monday is for mutton and mantelpieces, Tuesday for hearths and hinges, Wednesday, windows and stair rods. Thursday is for the lesser-used rooms like the library no one visits but must always be immaculate in case the vicar or the mistress's cousin comes calling. And Friday is floors. Every floor. Even the ones no one walks on. You're sent that morning to scrub the rear corridor, the one leading to the game larder. It's not part of the regular path. No carpets. Cold flagstone slabs. You ask just once if it's necessary. The housekeeper looks at you for a moment, as though calculating whether the question is ignorance or rebellion. Then she replies, "If it exists, it's cleaned." You never ask again. There's something relentless about the way she schedules it all. Not a single room is left to chance. The brass bedposts in the guest room are polished every 11 days, whether someone's staying or not. The banister spindles are wiped down on the first and third Thursday. The ceiling cornices, once a month with a brush wrapped in flannel, tied to a broom handle. She's memorized the schedule, doesn't need to look. But you suspect she does anyway, just to ensure everyone else knows she remembers everything. And when the mistress decides, on a whim, to host a musical in the drawing room, it is the housekeeper who declares a full polish of the pianoforte, fresh starch for the curtains, and oil for the lamp chains, all within 24 hours, no complaints, no overtime, just done. You once heard her describe the house as a living thing that must be kept from decay. At the time, it sounded poetic. Now, it sounds like truth, because you've seen what happens when something is missed. One week, the new housemaid forgets to dust the moulding above the dining room doorway. Just once. No one notices during dinner, not the family, not the guests, but the housekeeper does. She stands in the doorway the next morning, glances up and says nothing. The girl is reassigned to stove blacking for the rest of the week. That same afternoon the feather dusters are replaced, and everyone knows why. It's not cruelty, it's standards. Because cleanliness isn't just about dirt, it's about discipline, control, reputation. If the brass dulls, the house looks tired. If a windowsill streaks, the mistress looks careless. And if anyone finds a cobweb near the grandfather clock, it's not the maid who's blamed, it's her. The housekeeper bears it all, quietly, so she ensures nothing ever needs defending. But here's where it gets truly terrifying. Even the weather doesn't excuse you. Rainy day, you're polishing boots, indoors by candlelight with barely enough ventilation to breathe. Frost outside, that's when the brass doorknobs freeze to your fingers, and in summer, when sweat makes your cap slip and your sleeves stick to your arms, that's when you're told to scrub the greenhouse windows inside and out. The housekeeper doesn't slow down, she doubles the cleaning. You once heard the butler mutter that a dirty house invites chaos, and while he probably meant it as a joke, you now suspect she lives by it. Even the fireplaces must be dusted and inspected weekly, even in rooms that haven't seen a flame in years. She runs her finger along the mantel, eyes narrowed. If it comes away grey, someone's name ends up on the chart. If it comes away clean... She nods. No praise, just a nod. And somehow that nod feels better than a thank you. She controls not just what is cleaned, but how. There's a correct way to polish a doorknob, circular strokes, 3 minutes per brass piece, finishing with a dry cloth wrapped over the pinky to buff the crevices. You were never taught that. But she noticed the first time you did it wrong. She didn't say a word, just set the doorknob aside, and the next day, you found yourself assigned to every doorknob in the West Wing. By the 5th one, you had perfected it. And she knew. There are legends among the staff. That she once spotted a smear on a picture frame from across the hall. That she can detect candle soot on a ceiling without even looking up. That she keeps track of which rugs have been turned and when, not by a list but by memory. At first it all feels excessive, even cruel. But then you notice the effect. The house gleams. Guests compliment the air, the freshness, the feeling of the home. Even the mistress seems calmer when she walks barefoot through the morning room and finds not a speck of grit beneath her heel. The master never says a word, but you notice he never moves the bell rope anymore. His dressing table is always set exactly as he likes it. And downstairs, the staff may grumble, but they move like clockwork. There's rhythm in the scrubbing, pride in the polishing, and, most surprisingly, quiet satisfaction in earning her approval. Because that's what no one tells you. Her standards become your own. You find yourself smoothing tablecloths twice, checking your reflection in the copper pans, ironing the edges of the hand towels even though no one's asked you to. You begin to care, and that's when you understand her power. She doesn't control through punishment or fear, though both linger like shadows. She controls by expectation, and once you've met it, you don't want to fall below it, not ever again. Because in her world there is no such thing as just clean, there is only correct. There are no whips in this house, no yelling, no slam doors. But if you ask the staff what scares them most, they won't say rats, or the master's temper, or even the back stair on stormy nights when the lamps flicker and the steps go slick. They'll say, her silence. Because when the housekeeper disapproves, she doesn't speak. She looks. And it's that look, sharp as vinegar, cold as polished marble, that will have even the butler rechecking the napkin folds. You see it for yourself the first time you fold the mistress's underthings the wrong way. You didn't know there was a right way. No one told you. But when the drawer was opened later that day, and a corner stuck out half an inch, she noticed. She didn't call your name, didn't mark your chart, didn't sigh. She simply straightened it, slowly, precisely, then shut the drawer with one finger. The next morning your name was beside the laundry rotation. For a week, no word, no scolding, just assignment. And somehow it hurt more than any lecture. Others speak of similar tales. The footman who dared to whistle in the corridor, never shouted at, just placed on outdoor duty until the habit vanished. The maid who rolled her eyes during supper clean-up found herself assigned to grate soap for 3 straight days. The tweenie who forgot to curtsy to the mistress, not reprimanded but denied cake at Sunday tea. That was the worst one. You remember it well. The plate passed her by. The housekeeper didn't even glance at her, and yet every person at the table sat a little straighter after that. It's discipline in petticoats, measured, understated, devastating. You ask yourself, how does she maintain such control without raising her voice? The answer is simple, she's always watching. You begin to test it, once, briefly. One late afternoon, you slack off your pace scrubbing the vestibule tiles. It's a small thing, a moment's rest. You let your wrist go soft. She doesn't appear. You finish and head down to the kitchen, thinking perhaps you escaped. But when you open your locker to fetch your cap, inside is a folded note. Vestibule re-clean, 6 May tomorrow. Signed with her initials in that exact slanted script. No anger, no drama, just precision. And that's what makes it cut deep. It isn't about humiliation, it's about correction. She holds the standard so tightly, so immovably, that even the staff begin to enforce it among themselves. The older maids train the younger ones with military care. The cook glares when someone sets down a spoon too hard. The butler remeasures the spacing of the candlesticks, not because they fear punishment, but because she has shaped them. And in a strange way, that discipline becomes a kind of comfort, a rhythm. You know exactly what's expected. You know where the line is. You know that as long as you follow it, the house will hum and nothing will fall apart. Even if she never says well done. Even if she only nods. Once when your drawer finally lies flush and square. That nod, it's everything. You begin to understand something else. Something that creeps in slowly, like steam rising from a kettle. The housekeeper doesn't just punish mistakes. She prevents them. It's the way she walks the halls just before the staff descends for supper, running her gloved finger along a side table, or checking the placement of the mistress's slippers. It's how she glances, once, at the back door latch, and you immediately remember you forgot to bolt it last night. Her power isn't in what she says, it's in what she doesn't have to say. Even the butler, who is technically her equal, follows her cues. You see him adjusting his waistcoat after she tilts her head ever so slightly during a family dinner. Not a word is exchanged, but the message is clear and obeyed. She disciplines through dignity. That's the brilliance of it. No tantrums, no sarcasm, no desperation. Only consequences. Clean, quiet, and almost invisible. But there are whispers. Tales passed between kitchen walls and folded aprons. Stories of the old housemaid who once dared to answer back, who muttered that the housekeeper thought she was royalty, not staff. She was reassigned to the attic within hours. By week's end, she'd resigned. No one forced her. No one said a word. The house simply closed around her, cold as marble. And when someone asks where she went, she broke the rhythm, is all anyone says. Because that's what it is, isn't it? A rhythm, a pulse, a low, steady hum beneath every movement in the house, and she is the metronome. One evening, after a particularly long day of brass polishing and blistering knees, you catch a reflection in the boot room mirror. Your face is flushed, your apron wrinkled, but your collar, perfect. You didn't even think about it. Not consciously, but somehow before descending the stairs for supper you adjusted it, just as she would have wanted. That's when it hits you. She doesn't need to raise her voice because she's already in your head. Her approval has become the measure by which you judge your own work. Her standards have become your standards. You watch others for signs of the same infection, and it's there, subtle, but growing. The way the undermaid rewipes a table she already cleaned. The way the tweenie flattens her cap ribbon twice before entering the parlour. They all fear her disapproval, but they crave her respect, because a single nod from the housekeeper feels like winning a prize you didn't know you were competing for. Not flashy, not loud, just a silent acknowledgement that you're part of the machine. Trusted, reliable, clean. And once you feel it, just once, you'll do anything not to lose it. It's not discipline anymore, it's devotion. It's a bright morning when you meet your greatest enemy yet, a wrinkled sheet. Not just any wrinkle, mind you, not the kind that vanishes with a stretch or disappears under a pillow. This one is strategic, deep set, lurking right in the centre of the topmost sheet on the mistress's guest bed. You don't even see it until after you've finished the room, sheets tucked, corners square, lace covers laid. You step back, proud. For once the bed looks like something from a linen advertisement. Then she appears, the housekeeper. No sound, no warning. Just the lightest creak of the floorboard behind you, and a voice like a gust of wind. Again. You frown. She says nothing more, just walks over, presses a finger to the sheet, and lifts it, revealing the wrinkle. It runs across the centre like a scar. You feel your ears heat. You nod, clumsily begin to untuck, hands shaking. No rush, she says, almost kindly, but don't stop until it lies flat by itself. You remake the bed 4 times. You learn that morning what everyone else in the house already knows. The linen inspection is the final test of character. It's not just the sheet, it's the pillows, plumped evenly on both sides, the blanket folded exactly 3 hand widths below the headboard, the embroidered edges aligned, the corners tight enough to bounce a sixpence, and if anything droops, bunches, or betrays a crease, she'll find it. They say she once rejected an entire bed because a single hair, one lone strand, had been caught between the pillow and the sheet. No one saw it, but she did. It's maddening. You smooth, you flatten, you iron with your hands until your knuckles ache, and still, she stands in the doorway, silent. You can't tell if she's pleased. You don't dare ask. But on the 5th attempt she walks away without comment, and that's how you know you've passed, just barely. Later that day the laundry room becomes your battlefield. Stacks of white linens tower on every surface, pillowcases, petticoats, napkins, all ironed, starched, pressed, and she inspects every single one. Not by lifting them, oh no. She runs her hand over the top layer. If the edges aren't aligned, if the stack leans, if one napkin is folded with its monogram slightly off-centre, it's all undone. The stack must be rebuilt. And heaven help you if a crease runs diagonal. The starching is worse. There's a particular shine she demands. Not wet, not stiff, just the whisper of crispness. Enough that a tablecloth will fall with its weight but never wrinkle, even under a candelabra. You learn her test. She flicks the fabric with one finger. If it makes a soft snap, it passes. If not, back to the press. Once the cook jokes that if she had her way, the air would be pressed. The housekeeper doesn't laugh, just adjusts a pleat and walks away. Because to her, laundry isn't just laundry. It's presentation. Proof. If the linens are perfect, then the household is perfect. And if the linens fall short, then she has failed, and she never, ever fails. You start to see the deeper truth. Every wrinkle is a challenge to her authority. A smudge, a sag, a poorly folded napkin. These aren't just mistakes. They're flaws in the system, and her system must remain spotless. If the house is an orchestra, then the linens are the violins, always tuned, always watched, always under pressure. She checks them with the solemnity of a priest handling relics. One morning you spot her in the guest chamber, smoothing the hem of a lace counterpane with the edge of her gloved hand, as though offering benediction. She adjusts a single pleat, then steps back, one nod, then gone. That's her way. Enter, correct, vanish. Like a breeze that smells faintly of starch and control. But the real test isn't in the folding. It's in the drying. The drying yard lies out back, tucked behind the hedgerows and screened from view. Long ropes stretch between heavy posts, and on good days the linens flap like proud banners of a miniature kingdom. On bad days, rainy ones, cold ones, windy ones, they sag. And when they sag, they wrinkle. And when they wrinkle, well, you already know the rest. Once, a footman was caught bringing in the wash before it dried fully, just to avoid a storm. His haste left faint, damp creases. The housekeeper caught them before the ironing even began. He wasn't punished openly. But the next time he served dinner, he was demoted to clearing soup bowls instead of carving. That's how she works. Her authority flows downhill, invisible but everywhere. She even manages smell. There's a certain scent linens are supposed to carry. Sunlight, starch, maybe lavender if the season allows. Anything else, a trace of mildew, soap too strong, even a hint of coal smoke, and she'll know. And she'll trace it back to you. You begin to handle sheets like they're parchment. You watch how she folds, one hand holding the corner taut, the other smoothing downward with two fingers, like she's pressing memory into cloth. She's trained the rest of the staff too. The cook won't send up a tablecloth unless it's past her inspection. The butler defers to her when laying napkins. Even the mistress once asked whether the lace runners had that proper crispness. And the reply? They do now, madam. Nothing more. One day you find her alone in the laundry room. The rain outside is pounding and the ropes hang empty. She's seated at the table, turning over an old hand towel with initials embroidered so faintly they're nearly lost in the weave. She's not inspecting it. She's remembering it. Belonged to the old lady, she says quietly. Kept it for her dressing table. Used to ask if the monogram faced outward. She folds it, places it gently into the bottom drawer and locks it. That's when you understand. The linens aren't just cloth. They're history. Memory, proof that someone, somewhere, took the time to do something properly, and her job, her mission, is to protect that, one crease at a time. You've spent weeks buried in the inner workings of the house, dusting, folding, scrubbing, when you finally discover another dimension of her power, the threshold. Not the grand front door, of course. That's for the family, for guests, for carriages and invitations and polite lies spoken over tea. No, the door that matters to you is the servant's entrance, a low, sturdy frame tucked behind the hedgerow where the deliveries arrive and the real negotiations take place. And who stands at the centre of that web? The housekeeper. She controls the flow of people and goods like a seasoned gatekeeper. Not the butler despite his showy cravat. Not the cook despite her red-faced bluster. They're busy performing. She's busy choosing who gets to enter the kingdom. The fishmonger arrives at 7 every Tuesday. Rain or shine. He smells like salt and stories and thinks he's charming. But the housekeeper never smiles. He hands over the parcel. She unwraps it with fingers like scalpels. One glance, and she knows if the cod is a day too old. She says nothing, just raises an eyebrow. He blinks, begins explaining. She listens. Then she says, "Mr. Harrow's fish came fresher last week. That's all. And the next week the cod is perfect. No more excuses. You stand just inside the scullery door pretending to scrub a pot, and you realise vendors fear her." Later that day, the greengrocer shows up with apples bruised on one side. She rejects the entire basket, doesn't even touch it, just says no, and closes the door. He stands there for 3 full seconds before shuffling away, basket in hand, muttering apologies to the gravel. You learn quickly that nothing enters the house unless she approves it. Not the bread, not the candles, not the beeswax polish. Even the postman gets a once-over. When a letter arrives for a former maid, forwarded but with the old name scratched out, she intercepts it, opens it, reads it, frowns, then burns it in the hearth. "You don't want her being dragged back into that," she murmurs, mostly to herself. You never find out what that was, but you begin to see the quiet violence of her role, not in hitting or shouting, in filtering, deciding what the house sees and what it doesn't. That includes people too. The boot boy once tried to sneak his cousin in for a visit. Just a minute at the back door, a silly errand. The cousin never made it past the hedge. "She doesn't approve strangers," the tweenie whispers. "She smells them." You laugh, until you realise no stranger has ever lingered here long. She can sense dishonesty like others sense damp. She filters more than goods. She filters reputation. You see it when the vicar's wife pays a surprise call one morning. The mistress is still in her dressing gown, her hair half pinned. But somehow, in the space of 10 minutes, the drawing room is aired, a tea tray appears, the mistress is dressed, and the windowsill smells faintly of lilac, water, because the housekeeper had already heard the clatter of the vicar's trap at the gate. She'd sent the tweenie ahead before the bell even rang. She doesn't react, she prevents the need to react. And that's real power. But the threshold isn't just about blocking what's unwanted. It's also about choosing what's worthy to come in. You notice it most clearly with the tradesman, the candle maker, the cobbler, the dairy boy with his wobbling cart of cream jars and cheese rounds. When they arrive, they don't speak to the cook. They certainly don't ask for the master. They ask for her, and she doesn't rush. She inspects the soles of the new boots, the firmness of the cheese, the scent of the beeswax. She pays attention to weight, stitching, finish. And once, when the dairyman forgets to chill the cream overnight, she doesn't lecture him. She simply hands it back. Quiet. Final. 2 weeks later, he arrives with double the amount, packed in ice, with a cloth tied over the lid. He bows his head and doesn't make the same mistake again. Even repairmen must pass her test. When the lamp wick in the morning room sputters one winter's night, the mistress requests it repaired. The housekeeper arranges the visit, but she stands watch the entire time the man works, arms crossed, eyes sharp. He asks no questions, doesn't dare. And when he's done, she walks over, tests the wick herself, and only then permits him payment. It's strange. The family upstairs wouldn't recognise the lamplighter's face, but the housekeeper, she knows the names of his children and how much flour cost this month. Not because she's kind, though she may be, but because information is control. She manages the image of the house as fiercely as she manages its linens. The front gate squeaks once, and she oils it before the master notices. The rosebush near the servant's door wilts in the heat, and she waters it, not for beauty, but because dying plants reflect poorly on the order of the home. She controls the very impression of the household. When the mistress entertains, you see it in action. The way the guest towels are hung just a touch straighter. The tea cakes arrive half an hour fresher. The flowers shift from modest to lavish, never too much, but enough to suggest taste. And when a guest leaves, she watches from behind the curtain, counting how long the farewell lingers on the doorstep. That tells her all she needs to know about how it went. The mistress never asks. She doesn't have to. The housekeeper leaves no trace of the guest behind. No crumbs, no perfume, no echoes. The moment they're gone, the drawing room is restored to its default perfection. One night, you overhear her speaking to the butler in the corridor. He mentions a certain family rumoured to be coming for supper. She simply replies, "We'll use the second best silver. They'll notice it, but won't know why." And that's when it dawns on you. The housekeeper doesn't just manage the house, she curates it. Like an artist arranging a gallery, she controls the light, the scent, the sound, the story the house tells. She's not just guarding the threshold, she's guarding the narrative. And every person who crosses into this house, whether carrying mutton or wearing a silk cravat, is part of her design, approved, arranged, accounted for. You don't mean to see the ledger. It's not hidden exactly, just never touched. It lives on the second shelf in the housekeeper's room, bound in soft brown leather, its corners worn smooth. You've dusted near it, passed it 100 times, but one grey morning when she steps out for a delivery and you're sent in to return a stack of folded linens, the door creaks open and the ledger lies there, open on her desk, just one page exposed, ink still glistening. You pause, just a glance, and suddenly is not what you expect. Not columns of silverware or soap purchases, not linen inventories or wax tallies. No, it's people, a list of names, some familiar, current staff, others you've never heard of, and next to each name, dates, short notes, odd phrases. Left after sister's wedding, returned boots in good order, dismissed quietly, letters from footman, unwise, too soft for scullery, promoted to pantry, thrives. It's not judgmental, it's not even emotional, it's observed, studied, human. She doesn't just track what the house needs, she tracks who the house is. You barely have time to read more before you hear her footsteps. You snap upright, heart leaping into your throat. But when she enters, she doesn't scold, doesn't even look surprised. She simply moves past you, glances at the open page, then turns it, slowly, deliberately, and closes the cover. "You're curious," she says. You nod, unsure if it's a trap. She studies you, unreadable, then says, "That's not a ledger, that's memory." And in that moment, something shifts. A curtain draws back. She knows everything about this house, and not just the rooms or the rotas. She knows you, where you stand, where you struggle, where you shine. The ledger isn't about surveillance. It's about survival. Because every household depends on more than polish and pudding. It depends on people. And she's the only one keeping track of who's fraying at the edges. Later, you watch her in the hallway. She stops beside the new footman, notices the wear on his collar. She speaks to the cook with a soft phrase about lighter pastry next time. Hands are tired. She passes the gardener and asks after his sister by name. Each conversation is a stitch, tiny, quiet, binding the house together. You realise too that the mistress doesn't keep records like this. The master doesn't notice when a bootboy limps or when the undermaid forgets to button her cuff. They live in a polished world above the fray. But the housekeeper, she walks the edges, she notices, and that makes all the difference. Once you've seen the ledger, you begin to notice things differently, like how no conflict ever seems to explode here, only vanish quietly before it has a chance to spread. You remember the undermaid who used to grumble while scrubbing. One morning her bucket is reassigned. She's suddenly polishing silver in the still room, close enough to overhear the butler's jokes and the footman's flattery. Within a week she's humming as she works, or the day the scullery maid arrives late, eyes red, sleeves mismatched. No one asks questions. But that afternoon she's sent upstairs to help with the tea service instead of cleaning out the ash bins. A simple shift. Just one day. And by evening her sleeves are right again. No punishment, no questions. Just adjustments. You realise the ledger isn't just observation, it's strategy. She doesn't react. She anticipates. She watches how people fray and reweaves the fabric before it tears. Some call it manipulative. Others call it wisdom. Either way, it works. You begin to suspect she even tracks staff relationships, not with gossip, with patterns. Who lingers near whom in the servants' hall? Who changes seats at supper? Who blushes when the bootboy says good morning? And when something's getting too warm, she intervenes. A change in duties, a new rotation, a surprise reassignment to pantry detail. No explanations. But the message is clear. Affection is tolerated only if it doesn't disrupt the system. Romance is fine, in novels, not in the linen closet. But it's not just about discipline, there's care in it too. You hear her one day, speaking quietly to the cook. The young tweenie has been slow all week, clumsy with trays, forgetful with names. Leave her on lighter duties tomorrow, the housekeeper says. She's growing. Growing, not failing. It's the first time you've heard her speak of someone's mistake with softness, and then there are the red marks. You only learn of them through rumour. Each week, when she updates the ledger, a few names are marked in red. Not for punishment, for watching. It means that person is nearing something, a breaking point, a temptation, an illness. The staff call it being warmed by the kettle. If your name is in red, she's circling you, not out of threat, out of readiness. Because when someone falls apart, it's her job to hold the seams. You begin to wonder if you were ever in red. That time you forgot to lace your boots properly, or the week you nearly dropped the tray of crystal tumblers, or the afternoon she found you sitting too long in the still room, eyes heavy, hands idle. Perhaps she saw it. Perhaps she noted it. Perhaps that's why, the next day, your duties were quieter, steadier, polishing in the linen room where no one interrupts you, where you could catch your breath. And now, as you fold napkins and hear her footsteps pass outside the door, you feel something unfamiliar. Not fear, not pressure, protection. She doesn't just control the house, she guards it. Every person, every name, every page. And somehow, even though she rarely smiles, you realise you've never felt more looked after. By your 12th week, you know the routine. The chimes, the polish, the exact number of steps between the scullery and the back staircase. You move like a piece on a board, each turn predictable, each gesture learned. But then one morning, something shifts. You find yourself in the hallway outside the parlour with a silver tray in hand when you hear it. Laughter. Not the usual polite chuckle from the mistress, or the low rumble of the master. This is something lighter, younger. You glance around the corner. The new junior footman, barely 18, all bright eyes and high hopes, is standing just a little too close to the upstairs maid. She's smiling, brushing lint from his shoulder, slowly, deliberately, and he's not moving. You step back. Later, in the still room, it's all anyone's talking about. They were flirting, the kitchen maid hisses. In broad daylight, adds the undermaid. Near the parlour door, whispers the tweenie, scandalised. But the housekeeper says nothing, that is, until 3 days later. Suddenly the upstairs maid is reassigned to laundry. A temporary need, according to the chalkboard. The junior footman, sent to clean the boots of the stable hands far from the main house. No lectures, no scenes, just distance. And in the silence that follows, the message spreads. Not here, not on her watch. Because while the master may oversee the estate, and the mistress may preside over etiquette and tea, it is she who defends the house's reputation like a fortress wall. Romance among the staff isn't forbidden exactly, but it is dangerous. One misstep, one letter gone astray, one misinterpreted gaze, and the whole machine creaks with scandal. You learn there was once a parlour maid who received a ring, a modest little thing. Nothing wrong with that, except that it came from a guest, a friend of the master, a married man. No one spoke of it directly. The ring vanished. So did she. The guest never returned, and the only visible trace was a name scratched off the ledger, and a spot on the cleaning rota that stayed mysteriously empty for 2 weeks. You begin to understand that reputation, in this house, is not something you build. It's something you maintain, like silver, like brass, and one smudge can ruin everything. The housekeeper's strategy is not just avoidance, it's containment. She senses the first ripple of trouble and smooths it before it turns into a wave. She stations the older staff near the newer ones. She rotates schedules so that pairs never form. She watches where eyes drift during meal breaks, and if someone forgets themselves, sends a note, lingers too long at the servant's entrance, leaves a ribbon tucked in the wrong drawer, it is she who finds it first, not the mistress, not even the gossiping maids. She finds it, and quietly, completely, the problem vanishes. Some say she was once in love herself, that she trusted a footman once, long ago, and lost everything. But no one knows for sure. If she carries a broken heart, it is pressed flat between starch and ledger pages, because the house must stay clean, and that includes the stories whispered behind closed doors. But gossip, like soot, always finds its way in, through cracks in floorboards and whispers down stairwells. And in a house this big, with this many footsteps echoing across polished floors, silence is never as complete as she might wish. So the housekeeper doesn't merely fight gossip, she redirects it. You see it for the first time when a small scandal nearly takes root. The butler's left boot disappears, not both, just one, a mystery of absurd proportion. The household buzzes. Was it stolen? Misplaced? A prank? Was it the tweenie who's been looking flushed lately? Or the undermaid who's never liked the butler's snide remarks? For 2 days, the boot is gone. Speculation brews like soup left too long. You catch it on the edge of voices. Maybe he said something to the housekeeper. Maybe she's the one who took it. And just like that, the lines begin to fray. Until the 3rd morning, you find the missing boot in the warming oven, perfectly intact, cleaned, polished, sitting on a folded towel. No one confesses. But that evening during supper, the housekeeper makes a quiet announcement. Beginning tomorrow, pantry duties will rotate. The tweenie and the undermaid will report to the laundry. No mention of the boot, no blame. But the conversation shifts, and the gossip dies. That's how she manages rumour, not by confronting it, but by draining it of oxygen, by changing the topic, the pattern, the pressure. She knows that scandal is a kind of energy, and it must move somewhere, so she gives it a different outlet. Extra duties, reassigned corridors, sometimes even a special pudding for supper, not as reward but as distraction, a sweet heavy silence. And should something more serious stir, like an argument overheard between the cook and the housemaid, or a broken teacup found under the stairs, she handles it before the family ever senses a shift. You once hear her say, not to anyone in particular, the mistress must never smell unrest, it curdles the milk, and she means it. Because she doesn't just guard the rooms or the routines, she guards the atmosphere, the invisible climate of the house, that delicate balance of trust, duty, and well-oiled silence. Even the master, who barely glances at the staff, seems to walk with more confidence when the hallways hum with quiet precision. Even the mistress, prone to fluttering nerves and lace-trimmed headaches, seems lighter when the staff greet her with perfectly measured curtsies, and no one mentions the housemaid's sudden absence. Because the housekeeper doesn't allow absences to become stories. They become schedule updates, changed linens, unspoken lessons, and every maid, every boy, every footman knows, if you create disruption, you disappear. Not cruelly, not loudly, but utterly. It's not punishment, it's editing. Because for her, the house is a manuscript, every voice, a line of dialogue, every task, a sentence, and her job is to ensure the story never stutters, never smears, never strays from the polished narrative she spent years perfecting. You used to think she simply managed the people. Now you see it clearly. She manages the legend. And then, just like that, the mistress leaves. A carriage at dawn, 2 valises, and a flurry of half-packed shawls. No grand trip, just a sudden summons to her sister's estate in Surrey. The master remains behind, pacing his study like a tethered dog, muttering about dull correspondence and estate accounts. You would think everything might slow down, that the pressure might ease. After all, the woman of the house is gone. But what happens next? The housekeeper tightens everything. Breakfast times shift forward by 15 minutes. Linen checks become daily instead of weekly. Even the servants' hall is dusted twice. You ask the kitchen maid why. She shrugs. Because now there's no buffer. And she's right. Without the mistress to absorb the flutter and fuss, the entire house now reflects directly on the housekeeper. Every creak in the floorboard, every smudge on a window pane, every mislaid teaspoon. It's her reputation that's exposed. She rises earlier, walks faster, stops speaking altogether unless necessary. And then, one morning, you witness something unexpected. She's in the drawing room, alone, rearranging cushions, not just straightening them, choosing them. A bold floral is removed, replaced with cream damask. A vase is rotated slightly, its opening turned away from the door, and it hits you. She's curating now, not just maintaining. With the mistress gone, the housekeeper's quietly asserting a kind of aesthetic rule. She doesn't change anything grand, but the details shift, subtly, strategically. The master doesn't comment. He barely notices, if at all, but you do. Because for the first time the house seems calmer, not grander, quieter. By day 3, she's coordinating the master's meals directly with the cook, adjusting his tray, less game, more white fish, swapping the evening claret for tea with lemon. She doesn't ask permission, and he doesn't protest. In fact, one evening you catch a rare moment. The housekeeper stands in the study, handing the master a sealed envelope. He takes it with a grunt of acknowledgement, glances up and says, "Everything's running rather well, I must say." She inclines her head, says nothing, but her hand, you notice, tightens just slightly on her ledger. She's not proud, not smug, but she's aware, she knows, because this is the moment she's always prepared for. With the lady gone, she is the house, and everyone feels it. The staff begin to wait for her approval instead of the mistress's. The butcher asks after her preferences. The butler begins consulting her about the dinner bell. Even the dogs, lazy things that they are, seem to trail behind her skirt hem more often than usual. The rhythm doesn't just survive, it sharpens. Because beneath all her starch and silence, this is what she was built for. Authority with no ornament, structure with no lace, but with power comes pressure. And though the housekeeper never stumbles, you begin to see the toll. It's in the extra seconds she lingers at the breakfast tray before lifting the linen cloth, the way her fingers pause just slightly when turning the page of her ledger. She's absorbing it all, every schedule, every dish, every whispered complaint the mistress would usually filter. Because now, when the master asks where the vicar's note has gone, he doesn't call for his wife, he calls for her. When the lamp wick fails in the study, it's she who is summoned. When the young cousin arrives unannounced and needs a guest room made up within the hour, it's not tell my wife. It's see that it's done. And she does, without hesitation. But you see how tightly she holds the walls together. It's in her gait, still upright, still brisk, but with a strain just behind the knees. In her voice, measured as ever, but rasping faintly by day's end. Even the buttons on her cuffs seem more deliberately fastened. The staff begin to whisper, not with criticism, but with awe. "She's running the house alone," says the footman one night. "She always was," says the kitchen maid. "Now no one's pretending otherwise." And when the cousin comments on how fresh the rose arrangement looks, not knowing it was entirely the housekeeper's doing, you watch her lips twitch, almost, into a smile. She receives no credit, no thanks, but she doesn't need it. Because for her, control is the only currency that matters. But there's one person who seems to feel the difference more than most, the master. With his wife gone, his moods shift like the weather. Some days he's silent, staring into the fire with a scowl. Other days he's restless, pacing, slamming books, barking orders to no one in particular. And the housekeeper, she never changes tone. She speaks to him the same way she speaks to the fishmonger or the tweenie. Level, crisp, final. You hear them once behind the closed study door. "I don't want veal again." A pause. "It's what you asked for on Thursday, sir." Another pause. Then, "Well, change it." Silence. Footsteps. The door opens. She walks out, makes no expression. But the next day, it's lamb on the tray. She doesn't resist. She redirects. She doesn't argue. She adapts. Because she understands the balance better than anyone. She's not trying to dominate the master. She's sustaining him, keeping the household's illusion intact. But it's not just a role. It's a performance. A constant dance where the steps never stop, even when the music changes mid-beat. And you wonder, does she ever rest? Does she ever enter her little room, close the door, and take a breath not bound by duty? One night after supper, you pass by that door and see the faint flicker of lamplight under the crack. No movement, just a glow. Inside, you imagine her sitting still, ledger closed, cup of strong tea cooling at her elbow, and maybe, for just a moment, letting her spine soften, letting the silence be hers, not the house's, you'll never ask, and she'll never tell. But somehow you hope that when the mistress returns, she'll notice the weight her housekeeper bore. The precision, the care, the victory, quiet as pressed linen, and if not, the housekeeper will nod once and carry on. If the house is a stage, and it is always, then the butler is the one in the spotlight. He opens doors, announces guests, glides across the floor like a man born with polish in his veins. The guests see him. The mistress defers to him. The master nods when he speaks. But behind the curtain, there's her, the housekeeper, and what no guest ever sees, what even the junior staff barely whisper about, is the cold war that simmers quietly between them. Not a war of shouting or slammed trays. That would be beneath them both. No, this is a war of raised eyebrows, of reordered tasks, of teapots placed just an inch off centre to prove a point. You notice it first over a missing wine glass, one from the etched crystal set, normally reserved for the master's Thursday supper. The butler is pacing, checking the sideboard twice, then a third time. He finally calls for the kitchen maid. She shrugs, and then the housekeeper appears. It was sent for polishing, she says, holding the glass gleaming in a folded cloth. The last time it was used, the base had a faint wobble. You missed it. He takes it with a tight nod. No thank you, and no apology. That's how it begins. You start to see the patterns. How the butler insists the front hall flowers are his domain, arranged according to season and symmetry. Yet somehow, after every arrangement is placed, the housekeeper strolls past. Doesn't touch, doesn't move a single petal, just stands there. Then, by morning, the vase is gone, replaced by something smaller, quieter, more dignified, no explanation. You hear whispers from the parlour maids. They've been like this for years, ever since the silver tray incident. No one knows what the silver tray incident was, but it's said with such weight, you know better than to ask. It's a battle of subtlety. He controls the front of house performance, the shimmer, the posture, the proper way to fold a napkin with just enough starch that it holds its pleat. She controls the machinery beneath, the linens that arrive on time, the scullery that doesn't flood, the fact that no napkin ever gets folded twice because the first one was stained. He is polish. She is permanence. You once watched them pass each other in the main corridor. Neither speaks. But the butler adjusts his cuff. The housekeeper adjusts nothing. And yet somehow it is he who looks dishevelled after the moment passes. They don't need to speak. Their rivalry plays out in ink and glances. She'll change the tea service schedule without consulting him. He'll rearrange the cutlery drawer just slightly. She'll move the flour order forward a day. He'll request the boot boy polish the bells, her bells. But here's the twist. It never descends into chaos. Because beneath their quiet feud, they understand something vital. They are equals. And more than that, they are pillars. If either one collapses, the house tilts. So they prod, they test, they reassert, but they do not destroy. Because at the end of the day, when the master bell rings and the kitchen erupts in motion, and the fire needs lighting and the table must be reset, they move in perfect coordination, side by side, without a word. And yet, even in that perfect coordination, there's tension coiled like a clock spring. You see it play out during the garden party. The mistress has requested an outdoor luncheon, tea tables under the elms, soft sandwiches, cucumber slices laid out like lace. It's the butler's moment, or it should be. He chooses the silver tea service, positions the napkin rings, selects the serving staff with care. But the housekeeper, she selects the tablecloths, crisp, white, and weighted at the corners with tiny stitched roses. The butler raises an eyebrow. Too ornate, he mutters. She doesn't respond. She simply lays them out. And when the guests arrive, they notice the cloths. Exquisite, one of them says. So delicate and not a wrinkle in sight. The butler smiles, thin, hollow. She says nothing, but you catch the faintest tilt of her chin. Later, when a wasp threatens the sandwich tray, it's the butler who swats at it with his handkerchief, spilling 2 tarts. It's the housekeeper who replaces them silently with another tray, already chilled, already waiting. He stiffens, glances at her. She moves on. These aren't battles for show. They're battles of position. He works to be seen. She works so that nothing is seen. And in that distinction lies their uneasy truce. The footmen are loyal to the butler, of course. He trains them in polish, in posture, in the delicate art of answering a summons with exactly the right tone. But the maids, they watch her, follow her cues, copy her silence, learn to hold their ground not with formality, but with steadiness. The house divides naturally, unspoken but balanced. Like 2 hands clasped behind a back, never quite touching, but always moving in time. It becomes a rhythm, one that only breaks when the boundaries blur. Like the night the vicar's niece arrives early. No one expected her. The guest room hadn't been turned down. The butler frowns, flustered, sends a message. The housekeeper reads it, says nothing. 10 minutes later, the room is ready. Fire lit, scented linen, a tray of weak tea on the nightstand. The butler stands in the hallway, jaw tight. "You should have told me," he says. "I did," she replies. 6 weeks ago. She arrives today." His face shifts. Realization, then irritation, then respect. Just a flicker. She turns, walks away, keys clinking gently like wind chimes. That's how their Cold War works. Neither wins, neither loses. Each holds a domain. And the house? It thrives in the space between them, because it needs both. His flourish and her foundation, his polish and her pulse. One day, long after the kitchen has gone quiet, you find them both standing in the entryway. Neither speaks. They're simply watching the front. Hall, freshly waxed, silent, ready for morning. They nod. Once, not to each other, to the house. And then, wordlessly, they turn and part. That's their way. Not friendship. Function. You don't believe the rumours at first. Who would? The housekeeper, the model of restraint, queen of folded linen and unspoken rules, rebelling. Impossible. Unimaginable. And yet the whispers trickle in, carried like steam through the pipes. She once locked the silver cabinet and refused to open it. Turned away the master's guests on a Sunday. Left the ledger open on purpose so the mistress would see who'd been overspending. You try not to believe them, but then you start to notice things, little signs, a bill delayed, a supplier quietly replaced, a roast removed from the menu after the master complained, not reinstated even after he asked. Small things, nothing overt, nothing loud, but signs of resistance. And one day, it isn't subtle. It begins with a chicken. The master wants roast fowl for dinner. He asks for it directly, with that tone that brooks no delay. The cook frowns. She's short on hens. It's not her fault. The delivery was light. She says so, but the housekeeper says nothing. Just nods, leaves the room. And at dinner, what's served? Braised beef. No apology. The master lifts a brow. "I asked for chicken," he says. The butler stiffens. The cook vanishes behind the door. But the housekeeper, she steps forward, notebook in hand. "There were no hens suitable, sir. I made the adjustment. I trust it is acceptable." It is not a question. He blinks, says nothing, and eats the beef. No one speaks of it afterward. But the next morning the cook receives a larger poultry delivery, with her name on it, in her handwriting. The housekeeper had ordered it herself. That's when you understand. Her rebellion isn't noise, it's precision. She doesn't shout. She refuses. Refuses to serve food she doesn't approve of. Refuses to allow waste. Refuses to bend when she knows the fabric will tear. You start to see it elsewhere. When the mistress demands more roses, though the garden's already been stripped bare, no complaint. But the vases are filled with peonies, fresh, fragrant, stunning. The mistress says nothing. The next week she requests peonies. The housekeeper nods, no expression, no triumph. But you know, because this is her rebellion, not against the house, but for it. She protects it from its own foolishness, from whims, from laziness, from carelessness disguised as command. Even the staff feel it. When the new footman tries to skip his duties, claiming illness, she sends him to rest, but the next day assigns him to polish every brass stair rod. No punishment, just truth. "You're well enough to lie," she says softly. "You're well enough to work." And he does. But rebellion, in her hands, isn't a weapon. It's a tool, a quiet recalibration of power, one refusal at a time. You see it again when a new portrait arrives. The mistress's cousin, some aristocratic wisp of a woman, has sent it as a gift, an oil painting of roses in a garish gold frame. She insists it be hung in the drawing room. The housekeeper complies, almost. She has it framed, hung, lit with care, but in the smallest drawing room, the one that's used only on rainy afternoons, the one with the low ceilings and the green-tinged windows. The portrait looks wrong there, muted, out of place, but it's there. Technically, the mistress's request is fulfilled. And when the cousin visits, "Oh yes," the housekeeper says smoothly. "Madame wished it to be somewhere special, a quieter place for reflection." The cousin preens. The mistress nods, and the painting remains exactly where she wants it. That's the genius of her defiance. It's wrapped in compliance. Every choice is calculated, deliberate, layered with plausible obedience. But underneath, control. And sometimes, only sometimes, her rebellion is felt. It happens when a guest arrives unannounced. Not a welcome guest. An old friend of the master's, known for his loud voice, wandering hands, and tendency to appreciate the younger maids with too much familiarity. The last time he came, the tweenie wept in the still room for hours. This time, he's met at the door with formality so cold it could freeze glass. The housekeeper offers him a guest room that hasn't been aired in weeks. The fire is out. The bed linen is clean, but plain. The tea arrives late. The sugar bowl is empty. The staff responds slowly, deliberately. The message is clear. You're not welcome here. He shortens his stay. No one says a word, but the kitchen staff share glances. And the tweenie? That night, she eats 2 slices of cake. Not 1. 2. You begin to wonder how many other battles she's fought this way. So quietly no one noticed the war. How many disasters she's diverted. How many tempers she's cooled. How many outbursts she's absorbed. It's not just order she's preserving. It's dignity. For the house. For the staff. For herself. And even for the family, though they rarely deserve it. She once told the cook, "If the household loses respect for itself, it won't matter how clean the silver is." You didn't understand what that meant at the time. Now you do. Because every polished banister, every lavender-scented sheet, every crisp pleat isn't just decor. It's proof that someone is watching, that someone cares, that this place will not fall into chaos, not while she's still walking these halls. And if she must rebel now and then to keep it standing, so be it, because the house may have a master, but it answers to her. No one starts as a housekeeper. You learn this slowly, over the course of dozens of silent tea trays and polished brass doorknobs. It begins as a whisper in the scullery, a hint dropped over folded linens. She wasn't always like this, you know. And one damp morning, as you're sweeping out the boot room, the cook confirms it. She started as a still-room maid, barely 13, worked her way up. You blink. The image doesn't fit. It's impossible to imagine her, your housekeeper, as a girl, sleeves too long, hands raw from carbolic, eyes wide and blinking in the candlelight. But it's true. Everyone remembers a different version of her. The butler recalls her as a junior maid who once stitched his glove without being asked. The laundry maid says she used to sleep near the drying racks during frost season, just to make sure the shirts wouldn't ice over and tear. The gardener claims she saved the orchard once, suggesting a lime wash for the trunks before a blight took hold. All of it adds up to something unspoken. She climbed, and she earned every step, and none of it was given. You begin to notice the signs of where she's been, the way she can lift a scuttle without wobbling, thumb precisely under the lip, the way she inspects hearth ash with a glance and knows if it burned too hot, the way she threads a curtain rope back through its pulley without help. It's not just memory, it's experience. She's done every task in this house. She's scrubbed the same flagstones you scrub, wrung the same sheets, darned the same socks. But she doesn't speak of it. She doesn't use it to lecture. Instead, she waits. She watches to see if you will figure it out, if you'll follow the same arc, not just upwards but inward, learning not just the task but the why. Why the towels are folded in thirds, not quarters. Why the tea caddy must be wiped before opening. Why the mistress's boots are brushed counterclockwise. She's not teaching you a job. She's testing whether you're worthy of her legacy. And that's when you see it clearly. She's not just running this house, she's training its future. You remember the day she handed the parlour maid the inventory book, not because she had to, but because she wanted to see if she'd handle it with care. You remember the way she watches you clean the brass bell pulls, eyes narrowed, not looking for perfection but for method. She's always evaluating, not just performance, potential. Because someone will have to take her place one day, and she will never say who she's chosen. But you suspect she already knows. The signs are subtle, but they're there. You begin noticing small privileges shifting toward you. Quiet, almost imperceptible, like the warming of tea before it's poured. First, she asks your opinion. Only once. Only about tablecloths. Which of these two would you choose for afternoon tea? You freeze. Stare at the folded white damask and the pale blue linen. Choose the blue. She nods. Says nothing else, but she uses it that day. Next, she lets you handle the ledger. Not the real one. A copy. A small side book with notes on dry goods and candle oil. Keep it for the week, she says. Just until I finish with the main account. You cradle it like it might break in your hands. You triple-check the flour entries. No one else gets a look, not even the butler. And then she stops watching you so closely. That's when you know something has changed. She doesn't hover when you arrange the parlour tray. She doesn't inspect your napkin folds before supper. She doesn't correct your starching method. Not because she stopped caring, because she's watching something else now. She's watching to see what you do when she's not watching. It feels like being measured in silence. Others notice it too. The kitchen maid mutters, "You're her favourite now," but without resentment, more like awe, like you've stepped into a space most fear to fill. The butler? He doesn't say much, but one afternoon you find the pantry door ajar and hear him say to her, "You've been lightening your load," and she replies, "The house will need another mind, eventually." Eventually. It doesn't sound urgent, but it echoes for days. Then one day, you find a key. Not just any key. One from her ring, wrapped in a cloth, left on your cleaning tray. No note, no explanation. You bring it to her, expecting a test. She looks up from her desk. "That's for the linen cabinet," she says. "You'll need it for tomorrow." That's all. And in that moment, you feel the weight. Not of metal, but of trust. The kind that isn't spoken, The kind that's earned stitch by stitch, flaw by flaw, wrinkle by wrinkle. She doesn't praise you. She doesn't smile. But she adds a name to her book that night. You know, because you see her writing by lamplight, the ink slow and careful. Your name, no red ink, just black, permanent. You don't realise you've become her project until she starts correcting you less and questioning you more. It begins in the still room. You're arranging the drawer of ironed handkerchiefs, each one monogrammed, pressed, folded in perfect thirds. She steps in behind you. You expect her to point out the slightly crooked corner, or the one folded with the embroidery facing the wrong way, but instead she asks, "Why do you think we fold them this way?" You blink. You've never been asked to think about it. To make them fit, you say hesitantly. She pauses, then gently, so the monogram shows first. And then she walks out. You stand there, holding a square of cotton like it's suddenly the key to the entire house. That's how she begins to teach. Not with instructions, but with questions. How do you know the towels are dry enough to store? What does it mean when the laundry soap starts clumping in the tin? Why might a guest ask for water twice in the same night? Each question is a test, but not of memory, of attention. She's training your instinct, your ability to notice what others don't, to predict, to prepare. She doesn't say, "You're ready." She just starts handing you more. One day, she sends you to meet the bread delivery alone. "Check for freshness," she says. "How will I know?" "You'll know," she replies, and you do, because now you smell for sweetness. You press the crust. You listen for the soft crack that means it was baked before dawn. You count the loaves, even though she didn't ask you to, and when you hand her the bill, she says nothing, just files it away. Next week, she sends you to supervise the delivery of lamp oil. The week after, she asks you to record the pantry rotation, and before long, the other staff begin deferring to you. The tweenie brings you her questions. The new housemaid watches how you tie the curtain sashes. The butler raises a brow when you stand behind the housekeeper at supper, and she doesn't correct your posture. He's noticed. Everyone has. You don't wear a different uniform. You don't sit in a new seat. You haven't been given a title, but your work is different now. She's begun passing her world on, thread by thread, step by step, not by proclamation, by example. And one evening, as the sun slips down behind the hedgerows and the house glows with a warm lamplight, she hands you her pencil. Just once. "Would you note down the tea usage from today?" The ledger is already open. The column is waiting. You take the pencil, and your hand doesn't shake. Once your handwriting appears in the ledger, something shifts, not just in the ink, but in you. The column is small, just a few notations, ounces of Darjeeling, the number of biscuits taken from the tin, the missing spoon, later found in the scullery drain. Nothing grand, nothing permanent. But the next morning, when the tea arrives on time and the supply matches the count, she nods once, and you realise she's testing your ability to see forward, not just record the past. The lessons come faster now, no longer spread over months. She's compressing them, like folding a sheet, tight, sharp corners, no time for slack. One afternoon, she hands you a blank form. Menu plan for Thursday. You glance up. Guest count? 6. No children. 1 clergyman. The mistress prefers light sweets. And that's it. No recipes, no ingredient lists. You draft it. You revise it. You submit it. She reviews it in silence, then says, "The syllabub will be too rich. Replace it." You replace it. You don't ask with what. You already know. Lemon tart. Always lemon tart. Then comes the inventory audit. She signs it to you on a Wednesday. The ledger must be balanced against the pantry by Friday night. You spend hours counting tins, sniffing spices, weighing flour by candlelight. You drop your pencil twice. You nearly record the clove as cinnamon. But on Friday, when you report your numbers, she flips through the ledger, cross-checks, and closes the book. Matches. One word, but it lands like applause, and the staff notice. The undermaid hands you her drying rota before you ask. The footman offers you the key to the garden door without instruction. Even the cook grunts less when you step into her domain. You're not just one of the maids now. You're hers, her project, her apprentice, her successor in training. And yet, she never says as much. She never praises you outright. That's not her way. But there are moments that speak louder than compliments. One morning, you find she's left a note tucked into the tea caddy. Good instincts on the ginger loaf. Cut the sugar by half next time. It's not signed, but you know the handwriting. You know. Another day, you pass her in the hallway. She's holding the master's account papers. A servant asks her about the laundry delay. She pauses and says, "Ask her." She means you. And just like that, the question is yours. The responsibility is yours. You answer correctly. And she moves on. That's how the transition begins. Not with ceremony, not with permission, but with weight. Weight added to your shoulders bit by bit like water in a basin. One task, one column, one decision at a time. She still runs the house, but now you hold a corner of it. And as you walk the halls in the early hours, checking the shutters, feeling the rhythm, listening for a floorboard that creaks too loudly, or a hinge that needs oiling, you realize you've started walking like her. You've started thinking like her. And one day, sooner than you ever expected, this house might be yours, not by inheritance, but by trust. She doesn't announce her departure. Of course she wouldn't. That's not her way. You first sense it in the gaps. The morning she lingers longer in her room. The afternoon she leaves a task unfinished. Not by mistake, but by design. A slow handover wrapped in silence. And then one night she sends you alone to handle the coal men. Count the sacks, she says. Don't let them short you again. It's the first time she's said again. She's testing your memory of something she never directly told you. You do remember? 2 deliveries ago, 3 sacks were damp and underfilled. So this time, you bring a lantern. You check every sack. You tap the sides. You weigh one. The men grumble, but they don't cheat you. When you return to the house, you find her sitting by the parlour fire, not at her desk. Well, she asks. You give her the count, the weight, the time. You even note one man coughed into the coal. She smiles slightly, then closes her eyes. You're nearly ready, she murmurs. Your chest tightens. Nearly ready. Ready for what? The next morning she's not at breakfast, nor at mid-morning rounds. Instead, there's a sealed letter on your pillow, addressed in her writing. Inside, one key, one note. Drawers, closets, ledgers, yours. She's gone to care for her sister in Bath. An extended visit. No return date, no fanfare. You stand in your small attic room, the letter in your hands, and you feel the weight settle. Not like panic, but like truth. The house is yours now, not legally, not permanently, but practically, absolutely, functionally. It is yours. The responsibility lands like snow, soft, silent, heavy, and yet, somehow, you're ready. You wake earlier. You step into her shoes, not literally, but into the rhythm she left behind. You do the rounds. You check the locks. You approve the menus. You answer the master's question without blinking. You don't just maintain order, you create it. And the staff, they look to you. Naturally. Not one of them asks where she's gone. Not one questions your place. Because she has trained them too. To see you. That's the final lesson, isn't it? A true housekeeper doesn't seize power. She grows into it. Until no one remembers when it wasn't hers to begin with. It isn't until you're sitting in her old chair, your chair now, that you realise how little you truly knew her. Not the routines, those you've memorised, not the ledgers. You've mastered those too. But her mind. Because now it's you sitting up past midnight, staring at the candle stub, wondering whether to dismiss the new scullery maid after the broken bowl incident. She's young, clumsy, but honest. Would your predecessor have given her another chance? You think yes, but you're not her. You make the call. You keep the girl. The bowl, after all, was already cracked. The next week you face the linen crisis. The supplier is late. The master has guests arriving tomorrow. And the spare. Napkins? Mismatched. She would have found a way. So you do too. You dye the old linens with strong tea. It darkens them just enough to look intentional. A new set. Coordinated. No one questions it. The cook raises an eyebrow, impressed. Didn't think of that, she mutters. You nod. Quiet pride blooming behind your ribs. Then comes the letter. From Bath. Her handwriting as firm and pointed as ever. I hear the house is steady. The master is content. The staff are loyal. Well done. One page, but it lifts you more than a banquet's worth of compliments. She's watching from afar, but letting go. And you? You start shaping the house in your way. The pantry labels get rewritten, neater, clearer. The servant schedules shift slightly. Fewer late turns, more shared tasks. You move the warming bricks closer to the kitchen for easier access. Small changes, but they ripple. The footman stops calling you miss. He says ma'am now. And the mistress, she leaves you a list for the evening arrangements without asking if you're available. Of course you are. You're always available. That's what it means to hold the house in your hands. And one evening, after the silver has been counted and the accounts balanced, you slip into your room, fold the day away, and glance toward the narrow drawer beside your bed. Inside, the letter, the key. You haven't needed the key in weeks, because every drawer is open to you now. You don't ask for access. You are the access. And though no one declared it, no bell was rung, no ribbon cut, you've become what she once was, the quiet ruler of this grand and creaking ship, the mind behind the curtain, the still hand steering every wheel. And every so often you catch your reflection in a polished tea urn or a hallway mirror. You see the posture, the look, the slight tilt of the chin, and for a flicker of a moment, you're sure you see her, not standing behind you, but inside you. The house breathes with your rhythm now. Every tick of the hall clock, every squeak of the floorboard beneath the third stair, every puff of steam from the laundry room carries your signature. Quietly, invisibly, like the scent of lavender water on the linens. You're not always seen, but you are felt. It's in the way the undermaid checks the brass twice before polishing, because she knows you'll notice if she doesn't. It's in how the footman adjusts his cravat when you enter the hallway, though you haven't said a word. And it's in the mistress's voice when she says, "We'll leave the arrangements to her," without needing to clarify who her is. You. Always you. But with authority comes invisibility. It's strange. You command everything. And yet, the guests rarely know your name. To them, the meals arrive on time, the fireplaces glow just right, and the chamber pots vanish by magic. They never ask how, because the miracle is yours, and yours alone. Some days you miss the scurrying, the thrill of learning, watching, guessing her next move. Now, you are the one not being guessed. You are the mystery, and that brings its own weight. The decisions are yours now, without review. The salary envelopes are counted by your hand. The warning glances, the nods of quiet approval, they come from your face, and with all of it comes something unexpected. Loneliness. You're surrounded by people, footsteps, voices, laughter downstairs, but always a beat removed. You dine alone, just before the staff. You sleep with one ear open, the schedule spinning in your mind. You never truly rest, because the house doesn't either. But you do have one secret, a ritual. Late at night, after the fires are banked and the lamps trimmed, you return to the same place every week. The linen cupboard. It's quiet there, thick-walled, still. You light a stub of candle just enough to see, and you sit for 5 minutes. No lists, no corrections, no watching. Just the smell of starch and lavender and age, the hush of pressed sheets, and the memory of her, your predecessor, your teacher, who likely did the same. You imagine her in the same cupboard decades ago, resting her back against the wood, candle flickering at her feet. Maybe she was lonely too. Maybe she whispered to the folded linens just to hear something answer. Maybe that's why she taught you, so she wouldn't vanish entirely when the house forgot her name. And maybe now, without saying a word, you're doing the same, preserving the silence, preparing for whoever comes next. You begin to notice the smallest shifts before anyone else. The way the mistress folds her gloves a bit more slowly, the extra cough from the butler after supper, the torn hem on the tweeny's apron that she's too afraid to mention. It all passes in silence for them, but to you it speaks volumes. This is your house now, not by ownership but by intuition. And you've become the sort of woman who adjusts reality before it creaks loud enough for others to hear. You have in effect turned anticipation into an art. The master requests a guest room be made ready. You've already aired it that morning. The cook frets over the joint being too small. You've quietly moved the larger one to the top shelf of the cold room. Even the garden boy forgets to report a cracked pane in the greenhouse, but you've left a note on the glazier's bill. It's no longer about reacting, it's about foreseeing. And yet, despite all the precision, there's a warmth now. Not a softness. You haven't gone soft, but a humanity. The kind that lives beneath starched collars and numbered drawers. You send the scullery maid to rest after a dizzy spell. You lend the footman a pair of dry socks from the housekeeper's stash when his boots give out in the rain. You even let the undercook sneak her sister in for 5 minutes at Christmas. Unspoken kindnesses. No praise, no record, but they ripple. Because you remember what it was like to feel invisible, tiptoeing behind a woman who always seemed 2 steps ahead. And now, you're her. You've become the story whispered in the hall, the weight behind the rules, the reason things run smoothly, even when no one sees you pass. And although you rarely laugh outright and never raise your voice, your presence is as firm as the ledger binding and twice as enduring. And on certain evenings, when the world hushes itself just right, you take your tea alone, standing in the corridor, looking out over the front garden. The hedges are trimmed, the gravel freshly turned, the gas lamps flicker like watchful eyes. You sip once, let the steam curl into the air, and you listen. Not for problems, but for the sound of order. It's a quiet, fragile music, and you, yes you, are the unseen conductor. The seasons shift and you barely notice. Not because they don't matter, but because you've already accounted for them. The winter rugs came out last week. The heavier drapes are hung. Coal has been stocked in the east cellar, just in case the merchants strike again like they did last year. You don't wait for cold, you preempt it. And in that way, you've come to understand something deeper. This job is not about rules, or ledgers, or even obedience. It's about balance. A house like this isn't a static thing. It's alive, breathing, aging, demanding. Too soft and it crumbles into chaos. Too hard and it curdles into resentment. So you walk the tightrope every single day. And somehow, after all these years, you've become the master of it. You feel it in how the staff move when you enter a room, efficient, not anxious. You see it in how the mistress now asks for your advice, not just your service, and you know it from the way even the master, proud and distant as he is, accepts your quiet suggestions without questioning how you know. Because you do know the pattern of this house, the rhythm of its walls, the emotional weather of each floor. You carry it in your bones now. You can almost feel when the boots in the cloakroom are out of line, when the parlour ferns are one watering too dry, when the mood in the kitchen is off by half a smile. And that, more than any rulebook, is what makes you irreplaceable. Not authority, not fear, but trust. And one day, as you pass the grand mirror in the West Hall, the one that once made you straighten your apron nervously, you stop. You don't fix your collar, you don't smooth your skirt. You just look. And for the first time, you see her. Not the old housekeeper, not your predecessor, but the woman who holds the keys now. Her back is straight, her eyes calm, her hands folded not in service but in readiness. Because something else is changing too. You've heard whispers. The master might be stepping back. The family is speaking of a new estate somewhere quieter. And though no one has said it aloud, you know, this household may be nearing its final chapter. You've seen it before. Old houses fade, families shift, staff scatter, but the housekeeper stays until the very end. It happens not with a bang, but with an envelope. Heavy paper, fine wax. The family crest pressed deep. Inside, news that the house will be let. Not sold, not yet, but shuttered. Maintained only by skeleton staff. A caretaker, a gardener, no full household. You read the letter twice, slowly. No mention of your name, but the meaning is clear. They'll no longer require full domestic operations. They thank you for unwavering dedication, and then they ask, ever so politely, whether you would assist in winding down. You place the letter on your desk, you smooth the edge, and you exhale. Not with bitterness, not with fear, but with a strange and simple grace. Because unlike everyone else, you were ready. You've seen houses end before, though none like this one. And so, you begin. You take inventory not just of items, but of memories. The green satin chair where the mistress cried after her son went off to war. The cracked teacup cook always reached for on Mondays. The brass doorknob in the east wing that no one ever used, but you oiled it anyway, every fortnight just in case. You pack away the ledgers, write final instructions, sign off on wages with ink you keep warming by the lamp. You instruct the footman to return to his uncle's in Surrey. You arrange a new placement for the tweenie with a kind housekeeper in Hampstead. You hold the final supper in the servants' hall, simple roast and tart, but with laughter. You even let the scullery maid pour a thimble of sherry, though you never allowed it before. Then one morning, without announcement, you do what your predecessor once did. You leave. Not out the front, but the servants' door. Quiet. Early. You carry one carpet bag, your umbrella and the keys. Not all of them, just one. The master key. The one you never used. The one you were never told to keep. But somehow, you always had it. And as you walk down the frost-lined road, your boots firm in the gravel, you don't look back. Because what you've built doesn't live in walls. It lives in memory, in method, in legacy. You were the quiet engine behind it all. You held the house in your mind, your breath, your silence. And now, you carry it with you, wherever you go next, whether you serve again or not at all. Whether you fade into a cottage near the coast or begin anew in another great house, one truth remains. You are the woman behind everything, and the house, though silent, will remember you, even if no one else does. The house is quiet now. The fire is low, and the curtains have been drawn. The scent of polish lingers faintly on the staircase banister, and somewhere, far off, the ticking of the hall clock keeps perfect time. You're no longer walking those halls, but part of you still is. gently passing between rooms, adjusting the weight of silence and the angle of light. The duties are done, the silver is stored, the boots are lined up just right, and now it's time to rest. Tonight, as you drift off, you might imagine the softness of worn linen sheets and the hush of footsteps that never quite echo. You might feel a key in your pocket, smooth and familiar, or the chill of a brass handle just before dawn. Let those images fade gently. Let them carry you not to a grand manor or a dusty ledger, but to a warm, quiet place where everything is exactly as it should be. No tasks waiting, no bells ringing, just peace. You've done enough. Close your eyes. Breathe deeply. The housekeeper's off duty now.